So thank you everyone that's joined the GSAL Futures Conference, this talk on teaching specifically. We are really lucky today because we're going to be talking to Sammy Kempner. Sammy, do you want to enter the chat? Brilliant, excellent. So Sammy, I'll give you a brief introduction and then we'll just make a start with the questions if that's all right. Brilliant.
Cool. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
More than welcome. So Sammy is a teacher of maths at the Totteridge Academy in London. And he was also a student here in 2009. So it's brilliant. We were just saying before the call started to see GSAL students enter the world of teaching afterwards. So some successes that Sammy's experienced in his career. So he's in a maths department, which historically was sort of the bottom third when it came to results in the country. And in the last 2 years, most likely because of Sammy's incredible teaching ability. Recordings in progress again. We'll keep, yeah. So yeah, I'm sure that the jump in results is probably due to the success of Sammy and his colleagues and their ability to teach. So you're in the top 10% now in terms of your department. Your maths department won TESS Maths Department of the Year, which is incredible. That's amazing. And on his own, independently, you've managed to secure titles of Inspirational Teacher of the Year, and that was through the United Learning's Best in Everyone Awards, and more recently, the Pearson Silver Award. So we're talking to a veteran here, folks. Sammy, is there anything else that you want to add to your introduction, or do you want to just make a start?
Yeah, there's far too much praise on me there for the performance of the maths department. I was like only 3 years into my career when I started here, and it was already hugely transformed. But yeah, no, I think that's a good summary. I top 1% in results.
Oh wow, okay.
Actually,
sorry,
I think we were. To be fair, I think we were 7th best in the country on progress, which is having come from the 71st percentile is obviously like we're very proud of the transformation by a short space of time. But yeah, no, good. Ready to get started.
So is that progress measured in terms of progress 8?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, would you want to just give a very quick description of what that is, just to some of the students that are listening?
Yeah. So, traditionally, schools are measured based on attainment levels. So basically, how many A stars or grade 9s you got, which is a bit unfair on schools that aren't selective. So obviously, at GSAL, you take an exam, and therefore people who you have to pass an exam to get in, so the expectation is you do better and you get a higher proportion of grade 9s. So it's not necessarily the best reflection of the education happening in the school, because there'll be other schools where the students aren't selected but are taught very well and learn very well and make very good progress. So rather than doing just attainment scores, now schools are measured predominantly by their progress 8 score, which is essentially students come in on a given level based on their stats in year 6, and they're expected to make a certain amount of progress in the 5 years between year 7 and year 11. And then if they make expected progress, the school's progress 8 score will be 0, and that's the middle school in the country. If they do better than that, they make positive progress, and worse negative progress. And we started off with negative 0.7, which is, as you say, bottom third of the country-ish. And the maths department results last year were plus 1.51, which means on average, the kids made 1.5 more grades of progress than expected in maths. The school's progress was plus 1-ish, which is on average 1 grade across the school.
And I think that approach to measuring progress is, is so much more inclusive, because, it's not just about the cream of the crop at the top that are getting those, what used to be C's to A stars. So I like that it kind of takes into account everyone. Right, brilliant. We're going to make a start on the questions now. So nice and easy one to get you started. Why did you decide to become a teacher?
It's not the blockbuster answer that I think people want to hear, but truthfully, I was doing economics at UCL, philosophy and economics at UCL. I was in my 2nd year, and everyone was applying for finance positions and internships and what have you. It just didn't really interest me. And I'd done a lot of youth work stuff growing up. I'm Jewish, and I'd done some Jewish camps growing up, and then I ended up leading on them just because I wanted to keep doing them, but there wasn't space to keep being a kid, so I just ended up doing some camps. And then I realized that my CV was quite suited to teaching, So I was like, I looked at Teach First, which is a grad scheme that is designed to take it markets itself as like top graduates, but like, to be honest, it's just people with degrees. All teachers have to have degrees, but people like just anyone nowadays, anyone who wants to be a teacher. But the crucial thing about it is that you go straight into the classroom after 6 weeks of training in the summer holidays. So I finished uni when I was 22 and did 6 weeks of training that summer. And then in September, like 1st of September, just in school with like full timetable, pretty much a full timetable.
It was only 6 weeks at first then, the training.
Yeah, it's not enough. But it's also quite good to be just dropped in the deep end and just like, it's a little bit sink or swim. Like I've got friends who dropped out after about 6 weeks, but like if you learn very quickly, you have to, because you get immediate feedback in front of your face if you're not doing very well. And
wow. So the students wouldn't be there when you got that feedback though, would they? They'd be out.
No, I mean, so when I say immediate feedback in front of your face, I mean like the students are the feedback. Like if you do a bad job, they're gonna let you know about it, and they did very like.
So when it comes
in a very tough way.
So when it comes to so you've mentioned Teach First, and there are, just so students listening kind of have an understanding, there are these different routes available as well. I'm just going to kind of cluster these couple of questions at the beginning. So we have Teach First, we've got the PGCE, which is kind of the more traditional route into teaching. We've got School Direct, and we've got Skits. Now, do you want to maybe explain what each of those routes are, or do you want to just give maybe a little bit more detail on the process of Teach First?
I'll explain about Teach First. I know about it. Cool. I can explain a bit about my understanding of the rest. What did you do out of interest?
I did the PGCE. Yeah. So I think, I mean, if I'm honest, again, for everyone watching, this was a big, issue that I had when I was deciding how I wanted to get into teaching. Now, the School Direct route and the PGCE route, I remember a lot of my sort of like the academic mentors at the universities were saying there really isn't that much difference. A lot of them you have to do certain assignments that were approved or marked by someone at university, and both required 2 contrasting placements. So my understanding is actually that the PGCE and School Direct, because they're both accredited by universities and require 2 placements, they're actually very similar. So yeah, I guess my understanding is less advanced when it comes to Teach First and Skit. So go on, take it away.
So with Teach First, the idea is you go straight into it. I think the timetable is 80% of what a normal teaching timetable is, and you teach on your own a lot of the time. So I was just given like a bottom set year 8, a bottom set year 11.
Year 11 on your first year.
It was they didn't do well, to be honest.
Right.
They were like the most challenging class. I later found out they were the most challenging class in year 11.
It was nice that they let you in on the
to be honest, like schools, state sector schools are like, a lot of them are really struggling, like as I'm sure that people have heard about the strikes and what have you, and so it's sadly there's often not enough support for trainees because there's not capacity for it. They stitched me up a little bit by giving me a bottom set year 11 that was really hard, but and we wouldn't, in our school now, we don't give our trainees bottom sets, or like we try actively to give our trainees like the easier classes to try to set them up for success, but like not all schools take that approach. But yeah, so we end up you go straight in. You do have to write assignments throughout the year.
Right.
It was quite weird going from so at university, like the school obviously like tried my best with work and assignments and stuff, but once you start working a full-time job, then you suddenly get to the end of the week and you're like, oh my God, I've got a 5,000 word essay to write.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting kind of change of tack. You just have to basically get it done. And so I don't think it's not the most academically rigorous process in terms of like going into depth with the pedagogy, which is how the process of how you like teach the knowledge that you're teaching, for everyone watching. But on the other hand, you learn very quickly, and I think maybe you make quicker progress in terms of the actual classroom teaching. And I think there's never a dull moment in teaching, and particularly not in that first year of Teach First, where you're just in it and you've got to like figure out what to do.
I mean, I think I think the absence of a mentor as well with you in the class.
You do have a mentor.
You do have a mentor. Okay, so you are kind of getting that feedback after every lesson.
No, so the mentor basically. So I mentor a Teach First trainee at my school at the moment. So we drop in once a week for 20 minutes and give feedback on that. But I've got friends. So when I was a trainee, my mentor just didn't drop in. Like so one of them did, and I had a few mentors across the 2 years. So one of them did a bit, and one of them just didn't really. And our mentor meeting, she'd come in and be like, "So all good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, fine."
I mean, in hindsight, though, I do think there's too much of a good thing, and I think too much observation, it can give you a bit of a complex, can't it? I think there needs to be that balance between.
I don't know. I think there's a chance of overload. Like you get told too much feedback, and you don't really know which one to focus on. I think there's a real art to giving feedback, and so my school's got a nice open door policy. I love my school. I'm really happy here. It's a great place to work, and we have a really nice open door policy where teachers drop in on each other all the time. And, like constantly just give each other feedback, and like everyone always has to say one thing that's gone well and one thing that the teacher could do to improve the lesson. And so you get kind of like we call it, say, feedback's a gift, and
absolutely.
So we're constantly pushing that and doing that. But I think in the first year, there is such a thing as too much feedback, but there's also definitely not enough feedback. And I think a lot of unfortunately with Teach First, your experience of it is massively dependent on your school. So they place basically the Teach First mission statement is to address educational disadvantage. So there's a really high correlation with the socioeconomic background of like students and their families, and it's a negative correlation how well they do academically and at university and stuff. And obviously like that's just it shouldn't happen. So Teach First aim in recruiting top graduates is to try and address that by getting like good young teachers into teaching and sort of just like
create that
improving the quality of teaching and learning in the schools. So that's their kind of mission statement. And I think when I signed up for it, I really like that aspect of it. And some people like say that is their main driver. That's what gets them up in the morning. And for me, like obviously it's a great thing, and I love the fact that my job has an impact, like a positive impact on society. But to get me up in the morning, it needs to be fun, and that's why I'm a teacher. And I think I choose to work in a school like this, like a Teach First school, because I care about the mission. I think like the mission, like it's a big cult. Like I care about education, addressing educational disadvantage, but also I think like I've learned skills now that mean that I can thrive in this situation. And so I think if I can, then I should work in a school like this. But yeah, the main reason I teach and the main reason I stuck with it was because it is just at its best really fun.
I mean, so that leads us nicely into the next question, actually. So you've mentioned that you love your job because every day is fun. Now you're a maths teacher. I'm an English teacher, and maths and fun just not coordinated or correlated in my mind. So that leads me to my next question, which is how did you decide which subject to specialize in? And I'm just on the back of that, which age group with that subject were you wanting to teach?
So when I applied to Teach First, I liked maths at school. It probably wasn't quite my best subject. So I wanted to do history. So history was probably my favorite subject at school. In terms of like my A levels were French, history, maths, and economics. And so in theory, you can teach any of those things, but French, like, no, I can't. I'm not good enough at French to be able to teach French. Economics relies on sixth form being there, so that wasn't a Teach First subject you could apply for. So it's history or maths. I really enjoyed history, so I applied to do history. And history, it turns out there's a lot of people who want to teach history, and
100%,
virtually no one who wants to teach maths. So Teach First were like, no, you've got to teach maths. And I was like, okay, fine. I guess I'll make them like I liked maths, but I didn't really. I was thinking to myself, like, coming from a perspective of GSAL where everyone's keen to learn, and the people you're around who are really interested in maths, I was thinking like, how am I going to make just random kids who aren't good at maths like maths? I was like, right, it was just part of the challenge, we'll go for it, because they told me I had to, and I didn't want to like delay. And so anyway, I started teaching maths, and first of all, teaching maths ended up being great. I don't know whether you discussed this with maths teachers or something, but so my sister, who's also went to GSAL, she's 8 years younger than me. Her name's Rachel. She finished your school like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. She's now a trainee maths teacher as well. And she was a history graduate and loved history and applied to history. It's a similar route. She's actually, this is
wow,
quite bizarre. She's a trainee at my school, which is really funny. And
keeping it in the family.
yeah, absolutely. But anyway, she said the same thing. Teaching maths it's very easy to check for understanding in a way which essay-based subjects aren't. So
Yes.
to check for understanding with an essay-based subject, you have to get the students to write an essay and read it carefully and sort of like pick it apart, including like deciphering handwriting and all that stuff. Whereas maths, do you understand this thing that I've just like talked about? Here's a question, show me in a mini whiteboard. Yes, no, right, I know what I need to do to sort it. And that makes it a really nice thing to teach, because it's very easy to check for understanding. But also, like, the more I learn about maths, the more I love it. And the kind of as I say, like, I always enjoyed maths, but I don't think I had a deep love for it. And as I've like got more into teaching it, I've read more books. I've just kind of appreciated how maths the world is maths, in a way which I didn't understand before, I think.
This is just thinking back to the PGCE, but I remember there was a lecture once on maths anxiety as an actual concept, students getting really nervous, and that 100% applies to me. It just, whenever numbers were on the page, I just became scatterbrained and panicked. But
didn't have a good enough teacher.
Say that again.
Didn't have a good enough maths teacher.
Well, I'm putting it down to that, which is why, we need people like you entering the profession. But I think it is interesting what you say about, because you've said this on a podcast. So anyone else who's, really like listening to Sammy, he is on podcast. So please search that up. I was listening.
I'm on 2 podcasts. That makes it sound like I'm a podcast.
Well, you're famous now.
I've done 2. I've been a guest on 2 podcasts.
Well, this is going to be published too. This is going to be going on the podcast as well. So yeah, you've mentioned this idea that there is a quick turnaround in English. Arguably, it relies on those skills developing over a longer stretch of time. So maybe progress isn't easily visible, as readily as maybe in a math subject. So maybe that's an influence to some people that are good at maths that might want to enter that subject. Excellent. Right, we're going to move on. What drives you, and what are the best bits about being a teacher?
So yeah, as discussed, it's very fun. Like, it's so fun. Obviously, it's really fun, and there are times when it's actually just pure jokes. Like, you're having just a great time with your class, like playing games and whatever. I call them games. Basically, the game is like, we do a question. You've got to make sure everyone in your table understands the question. If you all do and I check, then you get some points. It's not like we're not like, but they love it, and it's like things like that when they get the competition going and all those moments are great. But I think more than anything, the reason that I really enjoy the job is just because it's unbelievably varied. There's not a spare. I've done other jobs before, like odd jobs, working in an office or on summer and stuff like that. And you're sort of like checking the clock, counting down the minutes for the day to be finished, and then you can end up just being a bit of a weekend warrior, just like wait for the weekend, but you don't have that at all in this. Like, the day is possibly too stimulating. There's too much going on, and you're just having to run around, just like, oh, I've got duty. Like, so just today, I had a meeting, and then I had briefing, which is all staff meeting, and then I had to do an intervention, taught year 11, had to get someone to cover my year 11 class last part, gave them a strategic test so that I could come here. And I'm going to go straight from here to a learning walk, which is where I drop in all the department and then give feedback. And then I've got to teach year 12 period 3 at the end of the day. And then I run a detention, and then I'm running staff versus student football, which I'm well excited about. We've actually got we've got a big charity game happening next. Like, for example, we've got a big charity game happening next week on Wednesday, selling tickets to go to charity, staff versus year 11. We're going to absolutely do them. And I'm really looking forward to it. But that's a moment where being good at your job and also just having an amazing time just kind of like intersects really nicely. And I think there's a lot of those moments in teaching where you're just having a great time, and that is your job. So that's why I enjoy my job, and I wouldn't do my job if I didn't enjoy it. I think like more that there is the other side to it, like I said about like whenever you look at the world's problems, and you look at like rise of intolerance and racism and whatever, and you sometimes can look at it, I stopped reading the news for a bit because it just get me down too much. And then you ask yourself, what are the solutions? How can we stop like people just lying in the media and stuff? And the solution is always education. People need to be better educated, so they can act better, make better informed decisions, and whatever. And so when you're feeling a bit bereft of hope, and then you think the solution is education, and you realize you're contributing to the solution, then it gives you a bit of hope. I think that's
Absolutely.
really important.
Absolutely. For the year 10s that are listening that are studying A Christmas Carol, remember ignorance, symbolizing the need for education. You've tapped into that nicely. Well done. We'll move on then. So this is, maybe you're gonna have some spicy takes on it, and I'm excited to see and hear what you think. What are the pros and cons of the teaching profession?
So the pros, as discussed,
Fun.
yeah, it's fun. It's constantly varied.
The
It's quite
relationships that you build.
Yeah, absolutely. Like both with the students and your colleagues, like you feel like when it's going well, you're a big team. And like, so I taught my current year 12s. I started teaching in year 7 when I joined the school, and I've taught them now. I taught a lot of them all the way through GCSE, like so year 7 all the way up to year 11. And some of them I'm teaching year 12. Watching them like grow up and the progress they're making is it's amazing, to be honest. And that is incredible. You have to really put in the time though, like that's a long-term thing, and you don't see that in the first couple of years. I think Teach First talks a lot about the impact you're going to have in the classroom, but you have to stick with it to see an impact. And so sometimes people don't actually see the impact because they don't stick with it long enough. I believe if you stick with teaching long enough to be able to like get good enough at it that you can control behavior and all that stuff, then it's unbelievably rewarding. Like you at the end of the day, you just think, yeah, like that's been a worthwhile day. The negatives are, so if you're working in the state sector at the moment, it's underfunded, it's criminally underfunded, like it's ridiculous. Staff are so stretched. Like I described my day just now, that's a very normal day. And ideally there'd just be more money in schools so that schools will either employ more staff, or at least you'd be remunerated for more for your work.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining about my pay. Like I'm happy. I've got a nice life. Like I'm comfortable. But if schools had more money, more staff could be employed, the responsibilities could be shared round a bit, then you wouldn't feel quite so stretched all the time. And I think it's been getting worse the last 5-10 years. And I think the more stretched that staff are, the less happy they are, the more negative schools can become, the more that the harder it is for staff to follow things up with students, the worse behaved students become.
Yeah.
And so the pressure and the kind of angst and all that stuff just gets worse. And so a lot of schools are sadly not very good places to work. There are, as I say, I love my school. It's an amazing place. Like people are very positive. The kids are great. It's a great place to be. But it's not the same everywhere, and I'm fully aware of that, and that is a massive downside. I think also, what was the other thing? So I think when you start out, behaviour is so hard to deal with, like bad behaviour from the kids. It can be like, and that's enough to put people off like completely. I've got friends that have stopped teaching in like these kinds of schools because they just say like I don't have the motivation to just like convince kids that this is worth their time.
Yeah.
I know it is, but and I think that sadly like that is quite prevalent. So that can be a problem with
well, I think it's, no one wants to have a confrontation with anyone, and when you're having to do that however many times a day just to keep someone in the room and focused, it can be, it has its effect, it takes its toll. I mean, again, I guess that links to just to reassure people that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that I guess it comes down to the importance of the strategies and the routines that you put in place to manage that behavior. And like you say, I think the longer that you're in the profession, it becomes second nature dealing with that kind of stuff. But
yeah, exactly. It's not a thing now in my head at all, worrying about behavior at all. It wasn't probably like by second year, third year, but like it's hard at first. But then, if teaching weren't worthwhile and if it weren't really hard, then we wouldn't be talking about it as a worthwhile profession itself. Like, you have to earn it. You have to earn the right for it to be a good job because it's hard. That's why one of the things that makes it a good job. If it was easy, then like you get bored of it really quickly.
Excellent. I've just looked at the time now, so I'm just going to skip forward with a couple of questions. Really referring to your National Teacher of the Year award. So could you just give us a little bit more information about what you received that for, and what you think makes a good teacher? So skills, qualities, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it was in my third year here, so it was 2-3 years ago. I had a year 11 class. It was a set 2 out of 4. So like the lower end of higher. And the class made like plus 2.5. I think it's 2.25 something like progress. So students on average made 2.25 grades more than expected. And off the back of that, my senior leadership team at my school nominated me for this award. And then I sorry if it's a bit noisy, changeover.
No, don't worry.
And then so I ended up being shortlisted. And then normally what would happen is they'd come into school and like observe for the day and see me teach and stuff. But it was I got shortlisted during lockdown. So they ended up just doing like a half day of interviews with like students and staff, parents of the kids I teach. And yeah, I got a silver award, which is, as my dad often points out, like Colin Jackson of teaching. Like basically never winning the gold. Yeah, but like obviously it's like I feel very lucky. To be honest, like there's an amazing teacher at my school who's head of teaching and learning, and he is just a man. And when I first joined our school, I've been teaching for 3 years. I honestly thought I was quite I was like, I've got it nailed. I'm really good at teaching. I turned up at my school and I watched him teach for the first time. And I was like, we're not even playing the same sport. He's like light.
Oh wow, okay.
Honestly, like ridiculous. And
I mean, so got some veterans like that here as well. It's intense, isn't it?
It's a master at work. And yeah. I was like, I was free when he was teaching year 11 that year. So I basically just watched him every lesson for a year. It was the best training I've ever had. So now so many of the things that I do that are good is just like copying him. But he hasn't got a Teacher of the Year award, which is like these kind of awards. Like he's the reason the maths department's won the maths team of the year, that I've got this award, and the results are so good. But that's that kind of full context to that. I think what makes a good teacher, high expectations, and that includes high expectations of behavior. So I think a lot of time people are like, oh, you've got to be really patient when you're teaching. You have to be patient when students don't understand something when they're trying. But actually, the kind of more experience I get, the more able I am to be like, you don't understand that because you've not tried. And actually, you shouldn't be patient with that kind of thing. And you shouldn't be patient with bad behavior.
Yeah.
You should immediately just like that's not something that you should wait for or take time like dealing with. You don't have to be kind of soft with that. But teaching also, you do have to like have soft like social skills and be able to like read situations and make the right move at the right time, because you're reading people. Like the whole teaching is a game almost, and it's a game of motivation. And so that like classroom teaching, obviously like outside the classroom can be more serious than that. My role in the school is head of maths, so I only really think about teaching and learning. So I do training for the department, and I do a lot of observations and feedback and what have you. But there's the other route to teach, that's called the curriculum route, because you end up like having a lot to do with the curriculum that's being taught. The other side to it is pastoral, where you deal with sort of the students as people in their lives, and like deal with like their entropy behavior, the social emotional side of like life for the kids. I deal with the academic side, and that the pastoral side deals with that. And
do you not think that you'd ever want to go down the pastoral side? Is that not
I like this. Don't get me wrong, I love working with the kids, and that's one of the reasons that it's so fun. But I think you have to be a certain type of person, very mentally resilient, and not able to. You need to be able to like detach yourself. So throughout the day, you'll have to deal with so many like horrible things. You'll get social services calling, the police, whatever, like all kinds of things happening, and you deal with them. You have to be there for the students. You also have to hold the students to account when they've done wrong in like you have to be really tough sometimes, in a kind of tough love way.
Yeah.
And then at the end of all, I mean, you might be dealing with emails and talking to parents. Sometimes the parents aren't on side, and that causes loads of problems. You have to deal with all that sometimes late into the evening, and then I think it's really important you're able to just like switch off. And I think for me, I'd be taking it just like to bed. I'd be like thinking about it far too much, and plus also I just really enjoy the academic teaching and learning side. And so it's a no-brainer for me. I'm very much set on this course. But it's, for some people, they love that. They love like knowing the kids that deeply and being able to have, and the best version of the pastoral side is being really proactive in direct, like trying to create a good environment and culture and trying to develop good all-rounded people, which is ultimately I think the point of school. Both even academically, like my aim is to produce like well-rounded individuals that contribute to society.
I will just say, so I have been looking at the Q&A. Now, we don't actually have any questions that have been asked. We've still got questions here that I can ask you, but
sorry guys, if it's been boring.
No, it's not. It's been absolutely brilliant. So I'm just, yeah, if anyone does have any questions, please do use the Q&A function. But if not, I'm more than happy to keep asking some of these questions here. So let's jump back into, you mentioned that you actually had a friend or someone that was doing the Teach First with you and they dropped out. Why is that? What was the core reason?
Yeah, so like I said, it depends on the school a lot of the time. And he was placed at a very spicy school with no support. He was teaching at A-level economics, actually. So he was doing business economics. So I guess that was an option. I just didn't fancy it for some reason. But he was placed there. I think he expected sixth formers to be a bit more up for learning. And that's a fair assumption. I think it often is the case. But he just, the behavior was horrendous. He had no support. And I think he's one of those guys, you look at him, he's like, just did a 3-hour marathon. He's like tall, good looking. Like, he's smashed everything in life.
Right.
And you just like, I think he just being like so clearly told on a daily basis how badly he was doing by how badly the kids were behaving and that stuff. I think he went home at half term. I think he had a bit of a rethink, and he's just like, I could push on with this, but at what cost? I think, and that is sadly what caused a lot of teachers to drop out. Is I think they could keep going, but you also do have to think of yourself, and there's no point martyring yourself. A problem that I have with the teaching world is that a lot of teachers are teachers and they're, oh God, I've got loads of marking. Oh, I can't see my friends this weekend because I've got loads of work. I don't know how much work people have got. I work very hard, like I put in a lot of hours, but I make time for the things that make my life better outside of work. And I think sometimes people like to moan, to be honest. And I think it's good not to moan and just learn to. I remember someone called me out for that when I was like 14 years old on the GCSEL bus. I can't remember what it was, the L13 or something. And then I was just moaning about the weather or moaning about school, whatever. And the kid was like, you just always moan. It's so boring.
And then that was it. That
was it. Honestly, I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I do moan. Anyway, people moan, and I think, but the problem is, people are overworked and it is difficult. And I'm like, I kind of think on the one hand, just don't teach if it's really if it's causing you that much bother. And it also kind of rubs off.
Is that not the problem though, that so many people are coming to that conclusion?
So that is also the problem. Like I want people to not feel like that in the first place, and that's why schools need more funding. That's why we need more teachers. And join us, guys, please. We need more teachers. And like the problem, people won't feel so overworked. But I also think the kind of perception that you have to live your life marking and no time and no energy for things is you can break against that without you can make time for things that are great. And I'm very I have a really good life outside of school as well. It's not all work all the time.
I mean, I think, the best bit of advice that I received when, I was doing the training was you need to be as thorough and, you need to stand by all of the things that you schedule in your diary that are social, in the same way that you're thorough and stick by and stand by the things that you put in your diary for work. Yeah, you've really got to, adhere to that and lay it down. If you want to go out with friends at the weekend, cut that time off and make sure that you do it, which is kind of, how I've been getting through. I don't know about you. How do you kind of manage that work-life balance, which is a horrible phrase, but
listen, any job worth its time, I think, requires a lot of you. Whatever the job is, if it's worthwhile, it should be quite hard. I'm not saying necessarily you should be working really long hours, but I think that's where the fulfillment comes from. At the end of the week, at the end of the month, whatever, when you go on holiday, I've earned this. I think I quite like the release of the working really hard all week. And maybe I do a bit of work on Saturday morning sometimes, and then I go play football on Saturday and I have the rest of the weekend, and it's a real release. And I feel like I've got a good balance there. My girlfriend's a barrister, and so that's someone who, for anyone who doesn't know, you're a lawyer, but you're the person who talks in court and argues a case in front of the judge. They often wear the wigs. She doesn't happen. She's an employment barrister, so she doesn't wear that. And her work-life balance is harder for her to manage, even though she's self-employed, because if she gets given a case by her clerks who kind of run her diary, and it's on a Monday and she finds out on Friday, and she's gonna have to work all weekend, and that is rubbish. so by comparison to, I think I actually like have
there's stability, isn't there? There's
exactly. There's a regularity
stability.
to the routine. You get a timetable, which in many ways is good because you can it holds you to account. You don't have the option of working from home, which means that you're not gonna, I don't know, stay out late on a Thursday and away with someone of mine, then just like sleep in on a Friday. And I think I like that. I think it provides good, helpful structure, and it means that I produce like good work, I think.
Oh, I think we've got a question. Okay. So Sammy, please could you give an example of a student or class that you've had a particular impact on? Also, which teachers at GSAL inspired you and why? You might have to answer that quite quickly.
Oh, that's look at that. So in terms of a student that I've had an impact on, so there's a couple of nice cases that have happened this year. So they were in year 13. I taught them both from year 9 all the way through when I joined the school to year 13, and I taught them A-level as well. And so they were both pupil premium boys so pupil premium means their family earn like less than a certain amount of money per year. It's like very little actually, like the family income is less than £20,000 or something, which is like significantly under the average salary. And they've got families, like they've got multiple kids anyway. So they're from relatively deprived backgrounds, but one of one of them, he was in set 2. So I taught set 2 out of 4. So set 2 kids often make grade 5, 6. So he ended up doing really well at GCSE. He got a grade 8, but he wanted to do further maths at A-level. So he did maths and further maths at A-level from set 2, which is unprecedented. But he ended up getting an A star in maths further maths.
Wow. Which
is just like, from a set 2, that's unprecedented. Like I've never seen anything like it. And watching him do that, and he's like, he ended up doing a year out. He's like got offers for like top Russell Group universities, and a boy who's in set 2 a non-selective school in year 9, going and doing that is you never call it, and that is sort of like, that's as good as the job gets.
That illustrates everything that you've been saying, doesn't it? The change that you've managed to make. And finally, teachers that inspired you at GSAL.
How much time have we got?
We're just running over actually. So
all right, fine. So Mrs. Weaver, Mr. Simons, was my maths teacher for a lot of the years back in the day, and so Mrs. Potts. And like, I don't know, I really enjoyed maths. It was a really nice environment to learn in. I had someone called Miss Sorrell, who was my form tutor and French teacher. There's also like, so Mr. Freeman, I don't know if he's still around.
He is still around.
Mr. Freeman was so scary in year 7, 8.
He still is.
9. But the thing, so that is actually me in the school. Like year 7, 8, 9 is terrified of me. And then when you get a bit older, you realise like, it's, you understand a bit more, and you see he's not actually just like that. And I think from a teacher's perspective, just seeing that kind of thing and just understanding like it's all part of the game of motivation. And so that's it's just interesting to see it from that side. You start look. I never really thought about things from a teacher's perspective at all, and never thought about being a teacher. And now I've entered that world, you look at everything with hindsight and okay, that's why you did that. I would have done the same thing in that situation. Most of the time I'd have been like, I'm just really upset, or just, I was very sensitive, and I used to hate getting in trouble. So if I ever did get in trouble, it was really hit deep. But
I mean, it's that idea, isn't it? And I remember they said again at the PGC, they said this, like, children do actually like boundaries. They feel safe and comfortable when boundaries are put in place. So I've just seen, I'm going to have to cut the live off in 2 more minutes, but last thing, this is mainly actually for me really, but it could be useful advice for anyone who's in the audience thinking, this is something that I really want to do. 3 behavior management strategies. What are they that you use in your day-to-day teaching life? What are your words of wisdom?
Switch, which is just like going from 0 to 100 in like a split second. So like, someone just you talking and something goes, you go bang, and it's like, oh, what? Like, and then you just pretend to be like psycho for 10 seconds, and you go back into normal life. Silence is a good tool. Like, not the absence of noise when you're in the middle of a. So let's say it's not like people aren't disrupting the class, but they're not listening properly. You can just say you've got a sense, and just sometimes you want to talk louder, but actually the lack of noise kind of like tunes people in a little bit. And the last thing is just consistency and following up. Don't ever like if ever something goes wrong, you must follow it up.
Mhm.
Until you've seen it out and the student knows that you're never going to give it up until it's dealt with. And I think, like, so when you first join a school, you have, like, the kids will run all over you because they don't know you. They don't know if you're someone who's going to let them get away with it.
No, I'm joking.
But like, and you have to, like, make a point. You have to, like, every single thing that happens, you chase up, you follow up, you call home, go through the attention. You see them in attention, you go, look, this is what's happened because of that. I'm not going to let this go.
Yeah.
And then if you do that over time, you develop a reputation for being someone that, like, there's no point messing around with. And then it fights the battles later on. It's an investment in the future.
And I actually think the respect for you then actually maximizes exponentially,
100%,
doesn't it?
Definitely.
Right, we are 11:24. We've got to end this at 11:25. So thank you so much for coming and attending the GSAL Futures Conference. Everything that you've said has been really useful, and I'm sure you've had an impact on at least one person, but most probably many more.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent.
Really enjoyed it. Hopefully one day I'll do it in person.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
See you guys. Thanks.
Real.